Well, hi, everybody. Good morning. This is Michael, and welcome to the LoveWorks Dreamers and Doers podcast. We are bringing you today episode number 53. And this one is definitely a special one for us because we started the LoveWorks Dreamers and Doers podcast 1 year ago today. And it was our vision when a lot of things were shutting down and there was a lot of uncertainty that we wanted to bring consistency through digital platform into the hearts and minds of our students to encourage their big dreams. We always like to say at LoveWorks that we believe that you are never too young to be a dreamer and you are never too old to get started working on that dream.
And our hope with Dreamers and Doers is that each week our special guest is going to connect with you wherever you find yourselves today, and they're going to inspire you to become the best version of yourself for tomorrow.
And Carolyn, if there's anything that we've learned from each of our Dreamer and Doer guests, we've heard great stories, but we've also heard from each of them that they all have a great desire to grow personally in their journey. And we believe that personal growth can be a blast. And so you and I, we love to curate different ideas and thoughts just about personal growth. And it ranges from music to podcasts and blogs. But we recognized when we were kind of doing our year in review that we've had a number of authors on our show.
Yes, quite a few authors, in fact. It's been pretty fun getting to basically increase our collection in our library with our friends.
So we are going to do our roll call, Carolyn, a little bit differently today.
Yes, we're going to do our roll call a little bit differently today. And so because it marks our 53rd and also our 1 year anniversary, we're going to celebrate that with a little giveaway. And so we're going to kick this off. And basically, if you can tell us what episode that this special guest starred in of the Dreamers and Doers podcast, you just have to give us a number of what episode. We will send you their book. And so we're going to kick off with Amy Downs's book. And this is a book called Hope is a Verb. And this tells the story of Miss Amy Downs. She's a survivor of the OKC bombing memorial. But more about that is that she was actually 355 pounds trapped underneath the rubble. And that moment was a life-changing moment, totally transformed her life. And so now Amy basically teaches on hope and how hope propels us forward into living our best selves. So if you can guess what episode number that is, we'll send you this book.
And episode number, we just want to make sure you know where to look for these. And so you can find these episode numbers on SoundCloud, on iTunes, and on Spotify. So you may have to have 2 to 3 devices out as you're scrolling through looking for these episodes. So Amy Downs kicked us off. We have another one here, and this book is called Unstuck by author David Skidmore. And it's a book that's really centered around turning your potential into purpose.
Got another book here. This is Step by Chris Capehart, an amazing book for someone who wants to accomplish goals but doesn't know where to start or gets really overwhelmed. This is a great book to go with. So Chris Capehart, Step.
All right, let's change things up here with a children's book. And this one is called All the Way to the Top by Jennifer Keelands, and her incredible story about how one girl's fight for Americans with disabilities changed everything.
Got another one. This one matches our brand even. It's called Be Fearless. This is actually a really new release, released last year, but it's by Michaela Ulmer. And it's all about how to be an entrepreneur and start your own business, even when you're a kid. Really cool.
And we know this guy right here, Baruch Alara, and this is the incredible true story. And this book chronicles Baruch's incredible adventures traveling with his family and how that shaped his vision for his leadership and for his future.
That was nice, Michael. Speaking of chronicles, this is the Girl Chronicles, and this is by our friends Elizabeth Grantham and Allie Grantham, the Girls of Beads of Good. And so this actually tells their story of how they started their nonprofit. But really, this is a great book for young people to figure out what's their superpower and how they can change the world.
Awesome. And if you're just tuning in, we're celebrating our 1 year anniversary of the Dreamers and Doers podcast by highlighting a few of our authors' books. And so we're encouraging you to, after you hear the book, or you could go back and rewatch this stream, to check out SoundCloud or iTunes and Spotify. Find the episode, first one to do that. Loveworks is going to deliver that book directly to your house. Carolyn, here's a throwback to our summer camp last year. And this is a book by Amanda Ferranti and Sean McManus. And it's a really cool book / workbook that's all about owning who you are. And it presents the Foundations workbook for all performance and individuals.
It's a really great book. We also have this book here. It's called Teen Boss Code, and it's by Margot Gianos. And this is actually a pretty nice and quick read, an inspirational read for anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur, especially if you're young. So she's got great quotes in there, stories, and some wisdom from a young entrepreneur's perspective.
All right. And we just have a couple more, and these last two are going to bring us closer to the much anticipated interview with our special Dreamer and Doer guest today. I'm going to leave the author out of this book for just a moment, but this book is called Rules of the Red Rubber Ball. Really special book. I'd have to say that we've given out more copies of this book to our students that are a part of Loveworks than any other book. And this book really encourages you to think about play in a whole different way and to discover what your own personal red rubber ball is that you can chase each and every single day.
Love that book. It's small, but boy, is it mighty. And then we also have this book. It's by the same author, and it's called A Kid's Book About Belonging. And so this is from a series of books, really children's books, teaching kids on topics that may be difficult to talk about or maybe a little bit abstract. And so love this. And it's a book about what it feels like to belong and what it also feels like not to belong. And so just placing some words on those emotions and bringing some awareness there.
All right, Carolyn, those were a lot of books, great authors, and of course, interviews, but we have one more special giveaway. Can you tell our viewers about that?
Oh, yes. So we've got a really, really, really cool giveaway. This one's real special. This is actually with a Warby Parker, I Am Other, and Pharrell collaboration. And so this also has to do with a collaboration with our very special guest who we're about to announce. But we're going to be giving away a pair of glasses. They're Warby Parker glasses. And then they are very specially made. You'll see that there's a nice yellow nerd tape section in the middle. It's not actually tape. It's actually built into the glasses, but it's all about, it's really about belonging. And so I love that these pair of glasses, it's a collaboration between Kevin Carroll, who we're about to announce, but also I Am Other, an organization that is all about inclusivity. And so we're going to be giving away a pair of these glasses. Super cool for the person who answers this question correctly. So we're going to be giving away these glasses to the person who can answer our trivia question first and correctly. And so today's...
Oh, you're going to get to the question first?
Oh, yeah. Right? Or should we do a little intro of our person?
All right. Well, in case you're new, our Dreamers and Doers format is super special. We have the fortunate opportunity every single week to sit down with a different dreamer and doer and give them the opportunity to share at least one of their dream stories. And we don't stop there, but we'd love to hear about what were some of the initial steps that they took to work towards their big dream. And we hope that it's going to inspire you to get from the place where you are today to the place that you desire to get to tomorrow.
And so today's interview question and trivia question with a chance to win a prize is, what animal is the mascot of the Philadelphia 76ers? What animal is the mascot of the Philadelphia 76ers? And I'll just say this, Warby Parker glasses, you can get them with non-prescription lenses as well. So if you are not a glasses wearer, you can still wear them and style.
I always love tuning in and hearing about our big prize giveaway, but this one in particular, Carolyn, I'm in the edge of my seat wanting to type in the answer in the chat box. Well, while others are doing that, let's get busy and let's get into our Dreamer and Doer interview today with special friend Kevin Carroll.
Kevin is an author of 4 highly successful books published by ESPN, Disney Press, McGraw-Hill, and a kids' book about. He has helped turn creative ideas into reality for organizations such as Nike, Starbucks, Adidas, Walt Disney, Target, Proctor Gamble, Columbia Sportswear, Mattel, and National Basketball Association, aka the NBA, and many others. Kevin has been dedicating his life to advancing education, sports, and play as a vehicle for social change and success. He was honored to address the United Nations as part of the UN Year of Sports for Development and Peace in 2005, and is an ongoing advisor and active supporter for many global social innovation organizations. Kevin was named by Success Magazine as one of the 19 seers changing the world. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, what's happening? What's happening?
Hey, Kevin, welcome virtually back to Norman.
Yes. Look, Michael, you know I love me some Norman, so I'm any way that I could be associated, affiliated, I'm happy to do it. So I'm thrilled to be a part of your show.
Well, we are. Thank you. We are absolutely thrilled and honored. It was such a special moment. We've been reminiscing about 6 years ago when you were last here in Norman, Oklahoma, and you took time out of your schedule. You're in meetings at OU and meeting with students and leadership classes, traveling from elementary school to middle school to high school, and you gave of your time to be able to speak with our students that are part of our after school leadership opportunity. And we're so grateful for that and just what you've invested just in our organization and the lives of our students.
Oh, I love me some Love Works. I'm all about that. So that was not an imposition or something that put me out at all. It was all part of, my ministry, as I like to say, right? That's what it is, right? Is to find a way to lift up the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers. So look at that. See, so we're supposed to be doing this. So it's all love. Let's go.
That is it. And we're going to launch into this. We're so excited for our listeners and viewers to get to know you more and hear just about your story. But I do want to ask you this question before we launch into the official first question. But pre-COVID, when you did travel, is it true that you would try and carve out a little bit of time to find a playground? Is there any truth to that story?
Oh, yeah. I'm always, it didn't even have to be a proper playground. I would always be trying to find a moment of play and actually just witness it. And so I was as present as possible when I was being, shuttled from place to place or whatever. And if I would see kids at play or a little basketball game going on or somebody shooting, hoops on a milk crate or, there may be a wall ball game going on, whatever it might be, impromptu kickabout, right? In some countries, I would always ask the driver or someone, could you just pull over real quick so I can just watch for a little bit? And they would always look at me quizzically like, why do you want to do that? And I'd say, it's a source of inspiration for me. It lets me see and understand that what I believe in is true. It validates it, right? That we all speak ball, that play and sports are everywhere and it's a language all its own, and that we can find that anywhere we go, no matter where we go in the world. So absolutely, it is something that I actively practice. It doesn't always play out, but my head's on a swivel all the time looking for it for sure.
Love it.
I love that. That's such great. What a great mindset to always be looking for play. Well, Kevin, welcome to the Dreamers and Doers podcast. We always love to start off with this question because we're known as Dreamers and Doers, and we definitely see you as someone who is a big dreamer, but also who actually takes action and does that dream. But we wanted to start with this and just ask, which one do you consider yourself comes more naturally? Are you more natural dreamer or more natural doer?
I think I'm more natural a dreamer because I had great imagination as a kid. The doer part came as I started to learn and grow, but also having someone enter my life that actually started demanding of me outcomes from my dreams. So I think that was a big part of it, is that I always had ideas, right? But I didn't learn the secret ingredient to manifesting an idea, a hope, a dream, an aspiration was action. Right. And so that is the work of a doer, right? Is action. So my best friend's mom was the one who taught me that. Right. And she would always answer any of my ideas, dreams. Miss Lane was her name, with why not? Right. That was always her response. But then the next thing she would say is, don't talk about it, be about it. There's lots of talkers and very few doers. Which one are you? So that's where I started to learn that I had to take action. But then the other piece she actually threw in there was, I'm going to check to see what you do with that. So she held me accountable. And I've had an opportunity to interview some really learned people around this. Miss Lane was supportive plus demanding of me. And that's the key, right? Is if we can find people in our life that are supportive plus demanding of us, that's how you can learn to thrive. That's how you can learn to turn hopes and dreams and ideas into reality. So how do you surround yourself with people who are supportive plus demanding? I think that's the key. And so Miss Lane was that first person that helped me with that.
So good, Kevin. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like as a society, I feel like something that we do well and we lean towards the supportive side. Yeah. I think we do a pretty good job. But there's a whole nother side of that equation that you just mentioned. It's also through placing the appropriate demand on this generation and students and or our kids. That's really powerful. Kevin.
Yeah, and not expectations. So I think there's something different, because an expectation can lead to disappointment because you're actually projecting your expectation of someone, right? And you didn't actually form an agreement. So you need to form an agreement with that person. And so I think that's the key, right? It's not because we project, look, I'm a parent, right? So I project my expectations on my kids. I expect you. We say it all the time, right? And then, of course, what do? They disappoint you, right? They let you down. And then not till I was older that I realized, like, I was setting them up for failure because I was projecting my expectation, but we didn't have a discussion about, well, what are yours? And so let's find common ground. And let's find this place of agreement so that you won't break your own promise to yourself. You'll be more prone to follow through if it's a promise to yourself, not a promise to somebody else. So I think that's the key. And Angela Duckworth, Grit fame, right? The lady that wrote the book Grit and 23 million, views of her TED Talk on grit. She's the one that actually brings up the idea of supportive plus demanding people in your life. And so I think that's a really good point for the adults that are viewing this, right? Is to think about their role within this journey of that young person in their life is how you can be that, but set up more agreements, right? And sign those agreements, right? But don't just keep projecting these expectations that aren't manageable, right? And aren't theirs. So yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to interject that. I just thought that was important for that to be that clarification around that. It's not expectations because people will let you down, but agreements. Miss Lane and I had agreements. If I came to the house, I'd have to update her. That was the agreement. If you come to the house after you've told me your idea, then I would like an update. Are you agreeable to that? I'm like, absolutely, Miss Lane. So I knew if I came over there, so I would avoid the house if I didn't have an update too. So she knew I was up to something too, right, dude? So that was the other thing that happened, right? She knew that I was not doing what I said if she didn't see me.
That's huge.
Kevin, you mentioned Miss Lane, and I know that there are several others that played a huge impact on your childhood. And so let's go back there if we could for just a few minutes. It's been said, and I think that you even said, that circumstances do not have to determine one's destiny. And so would you mind taking us back just a few years and talking and just setting this up of what was life like for you growing up?
So my life was one, children, sadly, they're still experiencing this, but no child should have to go through what I was going through. Yeah. And I didn't ask for it. It was presented to me because of the choices that my parents made. So both my parents were addicts. They made a lot of bad choices. So my childhood was filled with addiction and abandonment, upheaval and uncertainty, dysfunction and disappointment. And that was the norm. And that didn't change until my grandparents rescued us from a really bad situation where my mom had left us in a trailer for 5 days. My older brother was 8. I was only 6. My little brother was 3. And we had been in a trailer alone. We didn't even know where we were for 5 days. She hadn't come back. And so we got help, got put on a bus, 8, 6, and 3 years old, sent back to Philadelphia. We didn't realize it was 200 miles by ourselves on a Greyhound bus. And the bus driver only had a promise that my grandparents would be waiting at the bus station in Philadelphia and would pay them. So we weren't really aware of the danger we were in, how precarious this was. We were just doing what we were told, but we knew we were going back to a safe place, my grandparents' house. And that's all we wanted. And so I think understanding how to navigate all of that early in my life and choosing, right? My choice was I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to be a fighter. That was my choice. My parents made their choice. I made my choice. And so I think that decision to be an optimist, not a pessimist, which I think goes back to me being a dreamer first, then learning to be a doer. I think that all stems from those circumstances.
Where would you say that moment was, Kevin, that you decided, you're not going to be a victim and you're going to choose optimism and hope?
Oh, I was 6 years old. 6 years old. That's when it happened. I mean, when I got back to my grandparents' house and we were all sitting there and we're getting basically told by my grandparents what the situation was going to be. My mom was not going to get us back. They were going to do the best they could. But to hear this from your grandparents, but you're going to have to raise yourself. Imagine hearing that at 6 years old.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in a mean way or anything. It was a reality. They were older and they said, you're going to have to do a lot of this on your own. And so I made a choice that I'm not going to let my circumstances dictate my destiny, right? I'm going to have some fight in me. And so that's where I got my little attitude. I'll show you, right? Because I would hear the social workers check on us and say things to my grandparents like, don't expect much. I remember sitting at the top of steps. I'll show you. I'll show you. So I think that's where I made that decision. And then all these other things played out as a result of that innocent moment of inspiration and that decision to be an optimist, not a pessimist, to be a fighter, not a victim.
And we're going to get into a few of those other things. But Kevin, I've heard you say that at around age 6 that you found a few things. You found books, you found a ball, even on your new podcast, Cataglyphs, you found some misguided geniuses. Would you mind whatever you want to talk about? It could be books, it could be the ball that you found, it could be the misguided geniuses, but you needed to begin to take action. So you made a decision and then you started taking action. What did that look like for you?
So the ball was the first thing. That's play. So when Carolyn actually asked, right, around that question, like, did you ever play a sport? I played every sport.
Yeah.
Every sport. But it was never for trophies, never for first place, never for medals, always for belonging, always for connecting, always for being a part of a team. I loved being a part of a team because it was like family for me. So I loved that I was connected and I belonged somewhere. So that was first. So the ball was first. The playground was that first safe place. Then I got my public library card. That's where books entered. Where the Wild Things Are was the first book I took out of the public library. And that book set off my academic journey. I loved reading. And I didn't learn this till I was much older, that reading, when you're a good, strong reader in your youth, especially before 4th grade, you tend to be a good student, right? You learn to read up to 4th grade, then you read to learn after that. So I was a really good student and it didn't go unnoticed by my teachers. So they poured into me. And then there was the betterment piece, right? This crazy community of people. So Miss Lane, she was, the normal kind of person. But then I had, some grimy kind of misguided geniuses, I like to call them, in our neighborhood that were, they weren't the most upstanding citizens, but they meant well by me. Yeah. And they saw something in me and they poured into me whatever they could, from guidance and insights to little quotes, and sometimes just grab me by the back of my neck and saying, where are you going? You don't need to be hanging out with those kids. They're not up to anything. They're no good. Aren't you supposed to be at practice? Yes, go. So I think they, and they were drug dealers and users, war veterans, kids' parents. All these different people knew my story. They knew my story of what I was dealing with and what I was navigating, and they all wanted to pour into me whatever they could. So I always say that I'm a mosaic of many people, and all of them helped in whatever way they could. Some of it was good stuff, some of it was a little misguided, but it all kind of forms who I am.
Yeah, so good. I love each of those stories. And Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, could you just let us in on Nana Carroll?
Oh my gosh.
We've got to hear Nana Carroll.
Nana Carroll. I used to think my great grandmother, Nana Carroll, I used to think she was the meanest person because she made us sit still before we could go play. Every Sunday we went to their house, right? You had to go after church. I just thought my grandfather was so mean, right? That he would make us go to see Nana Carroll, right? So, and so, I was raised Baptist and Episcopalian. So I tell people we're Baptopalians, right? So that's what we're called, right? So it was every other Sunday you'd go to one church or the other. So, but we always went to Nana Carroll's after church. So my grandfather could be with his brothers. They'd hang out. So we'd always have to go upstairs and say hello to Nana Carroll before we could go out and play. It was the rule. Mm-hmm. I hated going to see her because she made us sit still for 5 minutes. It was torture. It was so mean to me as a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. I thought it was so mean, right? I even went and did the math, and I said to her one time, Nana Carroll, that's 300 seconds. She says, yes, it is. And you will sit still a little longer today. Oh, right. So, but what I discovered later in life, what she was teaching me, was how to be still and be present. How to be present. As she would say, be where your feet are. She would teach us how to be still. And she was basically teaching me how to do meditation, just to how to calm my body, right? Just to how to slow down a little bit. And what I started to learn as I started to settle down and lean into it more was I could actually see with my ears, if you will, right? That I could hear things, I could observe things with my ears that I wasn't necessarily aware of because I was still. And so she taught me how to be present and to be really in the moment and the importance of that. And so that's what I think Nana Carroll was so instrumental in. But in the moment, though, I was not feeling Nana Carroll at all, right? Yes, and she knew I was the wiggly one, right? I was the wiggly one, and so she would always keep her hand on me. She would never keep her hand on my brothers, but me always had her hand on me the whole 5 minutes. Yes.
Oh, so
I love that. Kevin, that's a little glimpse into, what you were like as a kid and learning about you. Of course, we hear that you were always chasing some sort of ball, which may have been a distraction maybe in school as well. Can you tell us more about just like you finding this passion for balls and really for sports and where that led you?
And that was not always so welcome in school, right? That I dreamt about sports, imagined I was going to be in sports. Michael, you and I had that shared thing, right? That I thought I was going to be a professional athlete, right? And I would write every paper about that. And of course, I would get discouraged by teachers. And so there was one point where my grandmother actually wrote a note back to a teacher because a teacher actually tried to discourage me from thinking about sports so much. And my mom, that's my grandmother. So there's Nana Carroll's different, right? So there's differentiation here. Nana was great grandma. Mum was my grandmother. So my mum wrote a note back and pinned it on my shirt. So I walked back into school and I said, I got a note for you, right? And so I pointed to the teacher. She unpins it and it says, and my grandmother wrote, if that's what he loves, so be it.
Yes.
So when my grandmother gave me permission to love that and to be passionate about that, and it wasn't wrong, it was the unlock for me. It unlocked all the possibilities. I didn't know what I was going to do with sports. I just knew I was going to be around sports. I honestly thought I was going to be this athlete. Little did I know that my intellect and my smarts would actually get me there. But I loved playing sports, but it was never trophies, medals, or first place. It wasn't about that at all. It's about being a part of a team. I loved being part of a team. I loved being connected. And I was this kind of athlete, and Michael and Carolyn, you both will appreciate this. I was super generous when I played, right? I wasn't looking for the glory. I wanted you to shine. And I learned if you shine, I shine. Because you're going to come back and give me love for that pass, right? For that assist, right? For me to let you take the shot, right? You would love me for that. And you would keep inviting me to come back and play. And that's all I wanted, right? Was to be a part of it. I didn't want to be excluded. I wanted to be invited. And so that's what I learned to do. And so sports was always about connecting and belonging and being a part of. And it was never about my own personal glory. I had a lot of success playing sports, but it was never anything that I stood out and said, look at me. I didn't want people to actually look at me like that, because I got worried if they looked at me too long, they'd ask a question I couldn't answer. So I did battle with self-esteem as a kid. It was hard. It was hard. I was always, that was right with me, right? Was all those circumstances. And I didn't want people to know, but I also didn't want them to treat me differently. So I fought my self-esteem a lot when I was a kid. And I know that there's viewers out there, right? Some of the young people that are watching, that is a challenge, right? Is to love yourself. And so I fought with that a lot as a kid. It was not easy for me, but Miss Lane was the person who kept encouraging me. And then teachers, right? And educators, and people noticed my gifts and talents, and that started lifting me up more, right? And I didn't want to be shy, right? Or hide, right? Oh, I've got something. I'm good at something, right? And so that other stuff isn't me. It doesn't define me. And so that was a big part of it too, was sports allowed me to elevate myself beyond my circumstances and not let my circumstances dictate my destiny. So I found a way to rise above my circumstances through sports.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Wow. That note of permission story is so powerful. When I heard you say it the first time, and we had the opportunity to have you speak here with our students, are part of our leadership program, it always makes me think of the story that's told about Walt Disney.
Yes.
When he may have been in the first grade or second grade, and there was a coloring assignment that they were working on, and the teacher looked over his shoulder and made a comment about the way that he was drawing faces inside the pictures of the flowers. And she tried to deter him, and said, well, plants don't have faces. And he paused, and as the story is told, maybe exaggerated over the years, looked back up at her and said, well, mine do. And he kept drawing.
Yes, right. Honestly, yes.
But what a moment though to experience. I think that permission and that freedom. Kevin, it's going to be hard to me as we work forward in your story. We're going to get to, and I know our students want to hear about Nike. They want to hear about what you're currently doing. It's going to be difficult for us to, I guess, move past the story of pots and pans. So I guess some of our listeners are going to have to go back and listen to Cataglyphs to listen to that episode about pots and pans. But can you talk
Earl?
dropping some nuggets, dropping some wisdom. Yeah. But let's talk about the Air Force. The journey eventually led you into the Air Force, and there was a powerful moment where you learned, and not saying this wasn't something that you did before, but the power of speaking up. Would you mind letting us in on that moment?
So Nana Carroll taught us, right? A closed mouth don't get fed. You got to speak up sometimes. You got to let people know your hopes, your dreams, what you want, right? They can't read your mind. So I got that poured into me a bunch of times by Nana Carroll. So I'm in the Air Force, and we're going to career day, and I'm going to be a security policeman. I've signed a contract to be that. And we're marching into the room where we're going to have the briefing about our new jobs and how our training is going to happen and all that. And I'm in basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. So as we're marching through this room, this hallway, you're not allowed to turn your head or anything, right? You have to keep your head straight. I glance and I happen to see this note written as small as it possibly could be on a blackboard. We have volunteer jobs, just ask. Huh. But I keep my head straight. We go in the room. They start unveiling our job. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not for me. No. And listen, there's a lot of people out there that think that would be the perfect, amazing job. But at this moment, there was a person walking the perimeter of a fence in pitch dark, right? With this voiceover, the security policeman is ever vigilant, right? And he's got a parka pulled all the way up, like you could barely see his face, right? It's freezing cold. I have no idea where he is, but it's cold, like in the picture. Like, I don't want this job. I don't want this job. I don't want this job. So I raise my hand in the middle of the briefing. You are not supposed to do that. What do you want? Who are you? These drill instructors come and they put the bills of their hats right next to my ear, and they're yelling at me from both sides. Who do you think you are? I can't believe you're interrupting my briefing. What is your name? Sir Airman Carroll. Where are you from, Carroll? I'm from Philadelphia, sir. You come all the way from Philadelphia just to tick me off, Carroll. no, sir, I have a question. He says, what is your question, Carroll? Sir, can I get another job? They're like, no, you signed a contract. Sir, I saw a sign. Don't get mystical with me, Carroll. What do you mean you saw a sign? No, sir, there was a sign on a chalkboard downstairs. They said there was a sign. So they start talking over top of me. Was there a sign? Did you see a sign? I said, where did you see the sign? It was on the chalkboard, sir. And it said, we have volunteer jobs. Just ask. And they looked at each other. They said, well, we can't keep you from volunteering. Go. And I walk down this hallway. There's a woman sitting there. And she says, can I help you? I'm volunteering. I have no idea what I'm volunteering for. I'm volunteering for whatever you have available. You had it on the sign here. And she goes, oh, yes, we need Morse code operators or language translators. I said, there's no way I can do the language thing. I dropped Spanish after 5 minutes in high school. I'm not going to be able to do that. Right? She goes, well, you got to take both tests. I take both tests. I pass them. They actually discover I have a language ability, and I end up going to language school, and I learn Serbian, Croatian, and Czech, and German. I can read Russian. But the irony of all that story, Michael and Carolyn, is I actually never forgot that 5 minutes of Spanish from high school. Es Susana en casa, no la cocina. Donde está la sala, no la cocina. So I still remembered it. Wow. So I always had it in me. It had to be drawn out of me, this other little gift or talent that I had, but that would have never been discovered if I hadn't spoken up. Yeah. And so speak up. A closed mouth don't get fed. Sometimes you have to have the courage to speak up for something, but you need to be able to back it up also. Yeah. Right. So it's not just a matter of being flippant, right, and back talking someone. You need to have a reason why, and it needs to be really, really clear why you are pushing back. Right. And not in a defiant way, right, but in a way where I want to raise my game. I can be better. I can do better. So I think that's what I discovered by speaking up. But that I don't necessarily recommend that in the military, because it won't always turn out that way.
That's hilarious. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's really hard for me to speak up. So I think I probably would have been an airman for the rest of my life or something.
You'd be walking that perimeter of that fence, right, for sure.
Well, Kevin, you just talked about 5 minutes that completely changed your trajectory in your life. Let's talk about another 5 minutes. And there was a 5-minute moment of you talking to youth while you were with the 76ers. So after the Air Force, you actually were one of the first athletic trainers for the 76ers. And you were speaking to the youth, which actually led you to Nike. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and just kind of your unusual start at Nike is what we've heard.
So yeah, it was once again, right? These anomaly, these unexpected things happen to me a lot. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to my childhood. That was an unexpected thing, right? Being placed on the bus, right? And sent back to my grandparents. So the unexpected became more normal for me, right? And I was present to see these things and see opportunities, but I also was reluctant sometimes too, like to surrender to things or accept things too. So the Nike thing, look, I'm the third Black trainer in history of the NBA for my hometown team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Michael, I made it to the league, right? So I made it to the league, not as an athlete, but as an athletic trainer. Right. And I'm running the whole sports medicine program for the 76ers. And it's amazing. Right. My two sons are ball boys. I'm thinking like, I have arrived. This is so good. And I get invited to speak at this youth event sponsored by Nike in Trenton, New Jersey. And I go out there. There's like 600 kids out there. And on the stage with me is Ahmad Rashad, Spike Lee, Quinn Buckner. Tell the kids, Google them. You'll figure out they're really kind of big deals, right? Especially Spike Lee and Ahmad Rashad, right? And then there's a guy from Nike. His name is Howard White. So they asked me to be the first speaker. And I speak to these 600 kids. I actually drop a little Serbian on them. I talk about some of my rules, some of the things that I believe in, some things I've learned, right? I finish and I turn around and Spike Lee says, we're supposed to follow that? And I get grabbed by the elbow by Howard White from Nike, and he pulls me aside. He says, hey, you're going to be at Nike one day. And I remember I was so flippant with him. I was, I'm going to be at Nike to work at your gym. The head athletic trainer for the 76ers, man. I ain't leaving this. This is it. I've arrived. Right? He says, you're going to be at Nike one day. Howard White goes back and tells some people at Nike about me. And he starts creating these consulting opportunities with Nike designers. Little did I know they were already starting to interview me for a possible role there. And 2 years later, I end up at Nike and I leave the 76ers, and everyone, literally people are saying, are you going to go work at the gym at Nike? I said, no, actually, I'm going to create my own position there. They're like, what? How are you going to do that? Right. And so that's what ended up happening. But I was with the 76ers from 95 to 97. And then I ended up going to Nike in 97 and working there for 7 years.
Wow. I'm impressed that Spike Lee was still left standing on the stage. If I was on that stage, I would have hightailed my way back out to the car. That's one of those funny things. I've only run into him like one or two other times, and he always remembers it. He always remembers it. Like, hey, ain't you that guy that speaks some languages? Yeah. Like, yes. Weren't you at that event in Trenton? Yes. He goes, I've been telling so many people they think you're a unicorn. They don't think you're real at all, right? I need to bring you with me sometime to just show right at a party. Like, no, this is the guy I was telling you about.
This is the guy right here.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of Black men from Philadelphia that speak fluent Serbian, Croatian, and Czech. So that's not a normal thing, I think.
Wow. Kevin, when you were asked to speak, you were the first one to speak in front of 600 to 700 youth. You stood there prepared. And something that we talk a lot about with our students is, failure to prepare is preparing yourself to fail. How did you prepare yourself for that moment? And when I hear this story, I just think to myself, is it even a challenge to our students that like now is the opportunity for you to prepare for your 5 minutes, because you just never know when you're going to be called upon and that 5-minute opportunity is going to present itself. So any thoughts that you'd share just on how you prepared yourself for that moment?
So this goes back to sports. You shouldn't be getting ready. You should stay ready. You shouldn't be getting ready. You should stay ready. So I learned to stay ready. And I, did a lot of youth events, and I had a fun thing when I first started doing youth events. I came out, I didn't have any props or anything, and everybody enjoyed it though, right? And I said, oh, but I could be better. So the next time I had a boom box, right? I'm playing like music when I come out, right? And everybody's having a little bit of fun. I'm like, oh, but I could do better. So I was always looking at how I could raise my game, which means that I always had this attitude of always trying to improve, always trying to get better, which means that I would always be practicing. I'd always be working on my craft, always trying to get better at it. It was the same thing with sports medicine, athletic training, Nike. How could I get better? And so that actively practicing my craft and understanding that you can always level up, you can always raise your game has always been my mindset. But I go all the way back to, coaches, right? Is the idea the best ability is availability, right? I had one coach that would say that, got to be available. The only way you can be available is you got to be ready. So stay ready. So I'm always practicing. I'm always working on it. I'm always trying to find a way to get better. And there is this thing, Michael and Carolyn, you might know this term, beginner's mind. Having this beginner's mind, right? This openness and eagerness to discovering things, right? And so I'm always open and eager to discover something around my gifts and talents to get better. So I'm always trying to improve. Tim Duncan has a great quote, good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best.
Boom.
So that's the way I do it. So I think that's the attitude you need so that when someone says out of the blue, hey, I've got this opportunity. You ready for this? Absolutely. Let's go. Let's go. Right. Versus, well, I need a couple days. Well, a couple days, somebody else is going to get that. Right. So how do you stay ready? Right. And I think that goes back to discipline, passion, purpose, intention. All those things matter. Yeah. So don't talk about it, be about it. Right. That's what it all boils down to.
That's good. Well, let's talk about opportunity. So you're known today as Catalyst, Kevin Catalyst with a K, but while at Nike, you were known as the mayor.
Yeah.
The vast majority of us, Kevin, as you know, the closest we're going to get to Nike and or Phil Knight is either wearing the tennis shoes or reading Shoe Dog. But you had a privilege and an opportunity to meet with him fairly frequently. But the moment came within 6 to 7 years of your time at Nike to move on. And could you let us in on that conversation, but then ultimately what ended up leading you into the next part of your journey and what you're doing today?
So I think it's interesting. That relationship with Phil Knight was serendipity. It wasn't planned. I didn't have any aspirations for certain titles or anything at Nike. I wanted influence without title. I wanted to have reach and impact without that title being behind me. I wanted people to rally around my ideas because of, hey, you're real. You're good people. You've got great intentions. But I brought that same attitude to Nike. If you shine, I shine. I'm going to get mine. So I had that team attitude, the things I learned from playing sports. So at Nike, Phil Knight started hearing about some of my projects that I had done. I called them creative capers there, right? So I had these little capers that I would pull off, right? They were always in the right spirit. They were never about me. They were always about elevating the culture and community and connections at Nike. I mean, I got 3,000 people to play tag. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, 3,000 people played tag for 3 hours. It was amazing, beautiful bedlam. But Phil Knight wanted to connect with me because he said, hey, you know this place. You're like the mayor here. He said, I might be CEO and chairman, but Kevin, you're the mayor here. So we met regularly, monthly meeting for like 2 years. And there came a point where I had a chance to leave, but I really was conflicted because I loved my time there. I loved being there. I had all the freedom I wanted. And it was rare, right? In a big organization like that, for someone to have the level of freedom that I had. But my whole intention was elevating others. So I sit down with him and I explain the situation that I'm in. I'm really conflicted. I love it here. And he goes, Carroll, I don't let talent leave here. And then he pauses, right? I'm like, okay. He goes, you'll be the third person I tell they should go. We would be selfish to keep you. You've got bigger work to do. So go forth and prosper, basically, is what he told me. And I left Nike in 2004, and I've been on my own ever since. And I think, one of the things that I had to speak up. I was explaining what was going on, but I also was prepared to leave. I was also prepared to stay. But I needed some guidance. I needed someone to help me kind of make that decision, maybe lovingly shove me towards my destiny. And he was being supportive, but also demanding of me. Like he says, I know there's greater things awaiting you. And then he said, you have to meet with me over the next couple years just to check in. So that was the thing that he asked me to do, was to come back. So I came back, and I still have a wonderful relationship with Nike. I've been going for 17 years now. But I know that conversation was catalytic for me to know that I had his blessing, if you will, to go out, right, and to go forth. And I just think that was another one of those unlocks for me as far as making a decision to leave something that most people would have never left. But most people wouldn't have left the 76ers.
Right.
Most people wouldn't have left that college job that I had. Many people wouldn't have left that great, Plum high school athletic training job that I had. Many people would not have left the military, the Air Force. So I think a lot of that, when you talk about opportunity, right, there is this notion that preparation, right, and opportunity meet equals success, right? That's where success happens, right? But what is that other thing? The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary, right? So like that's the other thing that you hear, right? That's the only place that you'll see where success will come before work is in the dictionary.
Mm.
So you got to put the work in, right? That's the way opportunities happen.
Mm. So good. So our students now and our viewers, listeners are wondering, okay, so where did he go? What did he do? Can you tell us now about Catalyst with a K?
So look, I think as it has evolved over 17 years, I thought I was going to be a certain thing. And that was just grown into this. I think I'm an instigator of inspiration. That's really what I'm doing. I'm an author and a speaker, but I'm an instigator, right? And I think I've always been that way, where I've always been trying to find a way to instigate inspiration, bring people together, build community and connection. and to let people know that, circumstances don't have to dictate your destiny, that you can rise above anything that you're dealing with, but you need to surround yourself. You need to have something that will get you out of bed in the morning. You need to know why.
Yeah.
So what are you chasing? All these things are things that I like to share with CEOs all the way down to grade school kids. And this is the work that I'm called to do. So I know that all the things I've gone through, all the things I've experienced, have all shaped what I am today and prepared me for this moment, right? To be this, what Miss Lane was for me, a CEO, a chief encouragement officer for the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers. So that's what I've been doing, man, for 17 years, writing books, running my mouth, and instigating inspiration.
I love that. Well, Kevin, can you? I think you just gave us a little preview of that, but can you just tell us more about why you love what you get to do?
Well, Carolyn, I think that's a brilliant question, because many people don't get to feel like their work is their play. It is for me. And I always say, though, you can find something that brings you joy. It doesn't have to be your work. I'm very fortunate that way, that my work brings me joy. But work can be a conduit to your joy. So I always tell people, don't hate on your job, right? Because that job, that Monday that's coming, means you have a job, which means that you can reduce economic noise, which means that you can then go after the thing that brings you joy. So it doesn't always have to be your job, the work you do. It can also be something that you find time for. So I think that I've discovered the thing that got me out of bed very early in life, right? And it was a ball, and then it was books, and then it was learning how to better others, because I was bettered by a community. But the ball and books first, right? I know that's what I love, and I'm always going to do that. But betterment is also this third piece. So those are my 3 Bs. I love them so much, I set up Google alerts. I literally have my Google alerts set up so that I find out what's happening around the ball, sports and play, books, literature and education, and betterment. Who's bettering the human condition? And I get Google alerts every morning, a download from Google of anything that's happening in those categories. So I'm plugged into that world. I stay as current as possible. I'm invested in that every single day. And I think that's what we're pursuing, right? Is finding that thing that we love, right? That we blur the lines between our work and play. And I found a way to do that. And I think that's been, the blessing that I've received, but I've also had the clarity. I've had people around me, surrounding me, supportive plus demanding people. And it's allowed me to thrive. But I always like to impress upon people, this is available for you too. This is not exclusive to me because I got lucky. Right, which a lot of people would like to point out. Oh, you just got lucky. I'm like, dude, it ain't got nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It's about passion, purpose, and intention, right? And I know what I'm passionate about. I know what my purpose is, right? And I stay very intentional about it. My grandfather would say, pay attention to your intention. Pay attention to your intention. If your intention is to lift up others, to inspire others, to work on X, Y, or Z, whatever that might be, then pay attention to that and be intentional about it. And so I think that's what's allowed me to blur the lines between my work and play, and to find what I love and be invested in that every single day. It's been really amazing that I get to do what I do every day. And my wife, what did she say the other day? She said something like, even during the pandemic, like, you don't have bad days. I said, I have days where I'll pause and ponder a little harder, but I do not allow myself to go down that rabbit hole. Yeah. Positivity for the win, FTW, positivity for the win. That's the way I am, right? I doubled down on optimism during the pandemic. I did. Yeah. I actually took 5 courses through Coursera and got a specialization in positive psychology. I wanted to understand the science behind this attitude I have, right? So that if you come at me, I'm bringing more smoke. I'm coming at you hard now, right? With the science behind it, right? Why I'm gritty, right? Why I have grace, why I'm optimistic. So this has helped me. So I know that my attitude, right, of grit, grace, and gratitude like that, it has served me well since I was a kid, and it will continue to serve me well. But now I got science behind me too. So I can get sciencey if you want me to. I can get a little sciencey about this too.
Kevin, that's going to be a whole separate podcast that we'll shoot.
Did you light up like a Christmas tree?
I love that. Get sciencey with Kevin. Get sciencey with the catalyst.
The catalyst. See, that's a very big chemistry term. So
right? It is.
Okay. See, it's already been created. We got
it. Kevin, before you go after that red rubber ball, we have one more question for you, and then we're going to recap a couple of our favorite parts of this conversation interview, and then we have a few questions from our students. But we're going to wrap up at least this part of Dreamers and Doers with this question. I'm pretty eager to hear what you have to say. We've asked you a lot of questions learning about your story and your journey, but I'm really interested for our viewers and listeners to learn from you today. And so this is about how Kevin Carroll, and you kind of just let us in on a class that you're taking, so maybe that's part of it. But I want to hear about how Kevin Carroll is getting ready for today. And this question springs from, I believe, an interview that you heard from Jerome Powell, who is the president of the Federal Reserve. So out of all places to hear a noteworthy quote, it's from Jerome. And he said, and he was very precise in his words as you commented, he said, if we can get COVID-19 under control, if we can understand what's going on with it, we can flatten the curve, that I believe that there will be a vigorous rebound after this. I know you heard that quote last year. So since last year, how have you been getting ready and preparing yourself for today?
I think, first of all, Jerome Powell, right, I think is brilliant, right? And I've done a lot of events for the Fed, so I always laugh, greatest oxymoron ever, the Fed and fun, me, right? So the Fed and fun, right? Hilarious. Yes, but I've done stuff with the Fed for years because they know they need to have some light in their lives because their work is so serious. Mm-hmm. But this idea of, hey, if the head of the Federal Reserve Bank believes that this rebound could be vigorous and could be amazing, I want to be a part of that. I want to be ready to launch into that and to be a participant, an active participant in that. So the positive psychology specialization was a big part of that, preparing for that, making sure that I keep my community tight and close and elevated and uplifted, because I've always said, if I'm not doing it for the people in my neighborhood, how dare I say I'm doing it for the world? So I need to be actively practicing what I'm espousing, what I'm preaching, what I'm talking about. That's my Rev Kev, right? So my Rev Kev happens in my neighborhood, right? So Rev Kev shows up in my neighborhood. I leave things, little morsels of motivation for neighbors, things on their porches, have conversations with the kids. So that's one of the things that I've been actively doing, and just being America's guest, right, on whatever, right? So I've always been just showing up as much as possible to bring the good word, right? To bring the good news. So I think, John Lewis talked about getting good trouble. So I want to get in good creative trouble. That's the way that I look at it. So I've been getting in good creative trouble. I'll continue to do that. And that's how I'm getting ready for this vigorous rebound, right? And you can see glimpses of it happening. So that's what I've really been enthusiastic about and excited about.
So good. Carolyn, I'm going to leave it up to you as our students are unpacking this interview here, that you can talk about what it means to get in creative trouble.
Wait, it sounds like very intentional and very guided genius, if you ask me. So
I like that.
I'll jump
That's
into that.
That's what's up, Carolyn. That's what's up. You can have that one. First one's free.
Hey.
So anytime, like you say, I'm getting in good creative trouble today. That's what's up.
I love it. Well, Kevin, thank you, of course, just for taking the time, sharing your story today, all of the genius you really have shared with us and the wisdom. Michael and I have a lot to unpack as well as our students. And so we're going to give you a quick break. We're going to recap a little bit. If you're out there, you're listening right now, you've got questions for Kevin. Maybe it's ranging from, I don't know, what he eats to what was it like at Nike to what's his favorite animal? I don't know. Come up with some questions, drop those in the Q&A, and we'll be right back to answer those.
See you in a minute, Kevin. Well, if there's anyone, Carolyn, that does not need a break, it is Kevin Carroll, because he's on his, as he calls it, his radical sabbatical.
He's always ready.
He is always ready. Carolyn, I know he lit a fire in you even beyond science that we started talking about at the very end. You almost lost me, but I'm back in.
Good.
I know we have questions that are waiting for Kevin, so you and I will be brief. I'll just encourage anyone is just to watch, listen, rewatch, listen again, this over and over and over again, because you're going to pick up something new every time you listen to it. Carolyn, if you had to highlight just one thing in part of our conversation, what sticks out to you the most?
It's definitely the idea of support in demand, and working with students, especially in a pandemic. Everything is kind of different. And some of the expectations, I'll even say that, has kind of, I've wondered, how much can I expect from our students right now? And how can I best support them? And I love that he just said, it draws back to the accountability. And I hope it builds grit and resilience in our students, that they really have been pulling through in a pandemic. I'm thinking more on that, thinking more on how I can support our students better, but also come to agreement with them on what and who do they want to become. I think that's huge.
Ooh, I like that. One of the parts, there's a lot of this that hit home with me personally, but it was Kevin. He talked about it a few times. He talked about influence. And a couple people that I look up to that have written about influence have been John Maxwell and Jim Collins, have written several books. And each of them have what they would call the 5 levels of influence. And each of the authors, they have different names for the 5 levels. But I like both of them. But John in particular, I believe he says that the lowest level of leadership is title. Being given, and so he starts there, and then he works at, you work your way up. And wow, I was so encouraged to hear Kevin talk about his aspiration after just looking and learning about all that he's done, that he's living a life of influence without the title. And that is such a powerful thought. And if that thought could get ingrained from our head into our hearts, and if we could live that out, talk about the impact that this generation could have out there for doing good. So that and so much more. But let's bring Kevin back, because again, I know that we have a good few questions and hopefully enough time to answer them. Welcome back,
Good,
Kevin.
good. Let's go.
You weren't napping on us, were you?
No. Well, man, stay ready. I told you that, right? So
Kevin, I'm curious. Do you take naps?
No, my wife keeps trying to encourage me to do that, but I feel worse after a nap. Like I do. I feel worse. I probably there's a lot of studies around that, napping, right? There's a lot around that. And yeah. I just try to get better sleep. I don't need a lot of sleep, but I try to get really good quality sleep. Yeah, because that's the other key piece, right, is your recovery, right? And so that's a big part of what I look into. And that's my sports medicine, my human performance background. I'm always thinking about that recovery piece, because that's what helps you show up each day, right, is how you're resting and recovering. So, yeah, so naps, I'm not. I got it. My wife, she's amazing at napping, like amazing. Like nap Olympics, gold medal every time, right? Yes, she can nap like nobody's business and get up. I'm like, how do you do that? You should be taking naps. I'm like, I can't do it. So anyway.
That's funny.
Hey, you know how you would nudge your competition in the Wino Olympics and the Preston Playground? How you would lean when you get ready to start your race?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
That's what my wife's going to do after she hears what you just said about napping.
She's going to nudge you. Is she good at napping? I'm terrible at it. I'm just terrible at napping. I just am. Yeah. So I've tried. It's not like I haven't tried. I feel groggy and just off, and yeah. And then I think I worry more about what I missed out on, even if it was only like 15 minutes. So I'm like, well, I might have missed something. So I think that's why I'm not really good. So it's more of a fitful kind of like, my eyes are not really sleeping or whatever. So yeah.
Well, okay. Well, let's get into our first question. And this is a video question, audio question from our website. And it's an opportunity for our guests that may not be able to either watch live and they have to wait for the podcast to drop. But this question comes from Kaylee, who's 12 years old.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kaylee and I am 13 years old. My dream is to become an author. Kevin, your journey is an inspiration. Can you tell me about a time you were able to turn a bad situation into an opportunity to grow?
Great question. Opportunity to grow in a bad time or a challenging situation. I just think, I told the Air Force story. Obviously, that was one that was really challenging and one that it wasn't necessarily a bad time. It was just like, is this going to turn into a bad time? Mm-hmm. So I think, Kaylee, what I've discovered in my journey is being able to speak up, being able to get people to rally around my ideas, my hopes, my dreams, to support me, but also hold me accountable. So that's been the key thing. In any of the times that I might have been dealing with something challenging or something that could basically get in the way, be a barrier to my hope, my dream, my aspiration. So I think making sure that I've created the right tribe around me of supportive and demanding people has really helped me be able to navigate anything that could potentially get in the way of me manifesting my hope, my dream, my aspiration into reality. Mm-hmm. But the Air Force story, definitely listen to that. That will give you a great insight into one of those like really crazy situations that could have went the other way, could have went off the rails for sure.
We've got another question here for you from Cameron, who's 11, and they ask, you've overcome so many obstacles. What has kept you motivated?
So I think I've just always been with this mindset of being an optimist, of being a fighter versus being a pessimist and being a victim. And I think that stems back to when I was young, very young, but also hearing people write me off, hearing people basically say, my circumstances were going to dictate my destiny. Look at what he comes from. It's not going to amount to anything. And I would always say, I'll show you. So I got an attitude, I'll show you. But I wasn't just saying that, I'll show you. I was about that action, right? So being about that action, right? And manifesting and getting people around me really made a difference. So I think that was how I realized that was deciding that I wasn't going to be a victim, deciding that I wasn't going to be a pessimist, and deciding to be a fighter and deciding to be an optimist.
Kevin, we have two more questions for you. This one is from Laura, and she asks, Kevin, you worked with some pretty big companies. What was one of your favorite projects to work on and why?
Wow. I'll give you a current project. So I just did this really amazing, like super dope project with Warby Parker and Pharrell's I Am Other and his nonprofit, which is called Yellow. And we did this whole workshop series on belonging, community, possibilities, and other, celebrating your other. And they designed this dope, amazing set of frames. Wait, I have them here. So you just kind of played right into my plan because I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to share them. But these are the frames. They're so good, right? So they call out the yellow. So when nerds would do the nerd push, right, they push their glasses up. So this is actually to call out, how do you celebrate your other? How do you recognize how you're unique and special? And I think that's one of the coolest ones I've done recently is to partner with those organizations, Warby Parker, I Am Other, Team Yellow, and to get these other individuals to talk about. I got to actually interview the co-founders of Warby Parker, Dave Gilboa and Neil Blumenthal, right? So that was something that I was really proud of. So yeah, so there you go.
I love that. Kevin, I've had glasses since first grade. I usually wear contacts now, but I really resonate with the nerd push because even though I don't even wear the glasses anymore, it still happens when I need to focus. It like just naturally starts.
You just naturally go there. Yes. So, and the project had this great name, Lens of Possibility. Yeah. So being able to see your possibility, right? So whether you wear glasses or not, I think it is this opportunity to see your possibilities. And the whole idea was to find your voice, your potential, and your power, and celebrate your other, that we're all other, we're all unique in our own way. So yeah, so that was really, really cool project that I just recently did. So I'm glad I got a chance to share that.
Well, we want to give you a chance to share even more. And I think this last question is great before we send you off. And this one comes from Charlie. And the question is, what was it that inspired you to write your first book? And had you written anything before then?
So Charlie, you should know this. My first proper name is Charles. So we got that in common already. Yes. So Miss Lane was actually the inspiration behind my first book. I had never written a book before that. And she insisted for easily 10 years, a decade, for me to write a book. And I kept saying, Miss Lane, why do I need to write a book? And she said, well, there's another you out there that needs to know it's possible. Yep. You should write the book for that person. And so that was my inspiration to write my first book, Rules of the Red Rubber Ball. Miss Lane was that. And so I just think that was the beginning of something I never thought, but I always loved books. Mm-hmm. So it actually makes sense that I would become an author, right? But it wasn't in the plan. Miss Lane was the instigator of that.
This book, by the way, you have a built-in fidget spinner in your book.
Yes.
You just
on
do.
The cover.
Where did the idea come from of the actual texture of the ball?
So when I worked with the design team, when we were designing this, because it was first self-published, and I said, we should actually call out the texture like a real ball on the cover. And so I love that, right? Adults will actually not rub that, but kids will always rub it and sniff it to see if it's really the ball. And it's so funny when they show me their books, you see little nose prints on it. It's hilarious. Yes. So kids will always authenticate if it's real or not, but the sniff, yes.
Well, Kevin, this has been an absolute delight. We've been looking forward to this time for a long time to get you back with us and just to be able to drop wisdom and nuggets like you have. We're gonna of course include in the show notes, like we always do, where to find you. And as you would say, hey, just Google me and you're gonna find Kevin Carroll. But would you mind sending us off? We've talked about the rules of the Red Rubber Ball. You've talked about your most current project with Warby Parker, but that's not all you've been doing. So do you mind just giving us, as we send you off, just a quick snapshot of a kid's book about belonging, and then also too about your new podcast?
So a kid's book about belonging, you can see it behind me here. And this is that's the oversized version. Michael's got a version there. That's the oversized. That's the read out loud version behind me. But I actually am one of several authors. There's over 30 titles within that are really big, important topics for the adults in a young person's life to actually start conversations around really important topics. And so mine is about belonging, but there's a range of topics from racism to anxiety to creativity to money. And there's 30 plus topics now, all different authors. So I'm proud to have been the first author in the series besides Jelani's book on racism. Jelani Memory, who is the founder of this company, a kid's book about, was my son's first friend when we moved to Portland from Philadelphia. I've known Jelani since he was a 13-year-old. I've known him 24 years, which is pretty crazy. And he actually calls me his Miss Lane. He says I'm his encourager. Wow. And so it's just, I'm so proud of what I've watched him grow up to become. And he's always included me in a lot of his projects. And so that's one he was working on. He asked if I would be the first author for them to figure out how to actually do the workshops for designing the books. And so I was the first author to work with them. And, you know, the books got selected by Oprah for the holiday favorites of 2020, which was so crazy, right? And they've really had an amazing amount of success in a short amount of time. They launched in 2019. So they're barely 2 years. They're not even 2 years old yet. And I just think I'm so proud of what he's done, but more importantly, the messages that they're putting out into the world for the adults and kids' lives to have real conversations around really important topics. So a kid's book about series is brilliant. LeVar Burton just gave it a shout out on CNN, dude. National Read, what was it? Read Across America Day last week. Yeah, he gave it a shout out. So Reading Rainbow shout out. Come on, right? So I'm really proud of that project, and even more so, just proud of the fact that I've been able to carry on the legacy of Miss Lane and be that next iteration of her, the 2.0 version of Miss Lane, the CEO, a chief encouragement officer of others. And that's what I hope that we've been able to do here, right? Is to encourage someone who needed to hear this message today. And I've always been a firm believer, my actions may seem small, but their collective impact will be great.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to do my part.
Incredible. Kevin, today's time with you has been an absolute gift. So thank you for carving out the time for us, and we are definitely better for it.
I love me some Love Works. You know the deal, man. Come on, right? It's all love. It's all good. I appreciate all of you guys. Be well. Godspeed, man. Peace and play.
Wow. Now that was a great episode, right, Michael?
Carolyn, I just feel like we took in a leadership buffet this morning with all that we just talked about on the front end, being the year anniversary, recapping a few of our guests and books, and then Kevin Carroll. Does it get much better than that on a Monday morning?
Michael, I think I'm having some connectivity issues or whichever. I unfortunately cannot hear you.
Oh, no. Carolyn, well, take it away from here.
Well, folks, I hope you are. Okay, cool. At least our team can.
Oh, that's good. So we should just carry on. Well, cool. Well, we hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. And we always like to remind you to mark your calendars for the following week. So this coming Monday, I know a tough act to follow with Kevin Carroll, but we are certainly going to do that. And we're going to bring in dreamer and doer Kyle Dillingham, who is known as Oklahoma's musical ambassador, who's played the violin since the age of 9. And here's a few people that he's performed in front of. The King of Malaysia, the Princess of Thailand, Beijing Central Conservatory, and Singapore's National Day celebration. And just a quick side note about Kyle is he also plays his fiddle and violin while riding on a skateboard. We've seen it a number of times at live performances, and it is just awesome. So mark your calendars for next Monday.
For sure. And just a reminder to visit loveworksleadership.org to learn more about us. And you can even reach out to us with our personal contacts on there if you want to give us a call or a text or an email, whichever.
Is that at loveworksleadership.org, Carolyn?
That is at loveworksleadership.org.
Awesome. Well, that's where you can find us. Well, again, thank you so much for tuning in to our special year anniversary episode of the Dreamers and Doers podcast. We know that there are a plethora and myriad of options when it comes to podcasts, especially today. So thank you for tuning in to ours. And remember that real leaders, they don't blend in, but they stand out.
Dream big.
And do your dream. Bye, everybody.